What's up, you beautiful people? Today, I want to get kind of technical. I want to talk about something that is incredibly painful. And I hope that you never have to go through it. And perhaps by sharing this video and breaking down some ideas, it will save you the pain. But I was thinking about this because I was just talking with one of my students this morning about the fact that she's going through something she's going through this right now. And it's something that I went through over the last 7-8 months, and I've shared about that in other podcasts. But it's partnership issues. It's partnership issues within your business. It's one of the most painful things that can occur because, in a very real way, your business partner, it's like a marriage. You guys are co-creating a thing, bringing to life your business, and it's not an actual baby, but it's kind of like a baby. You pour your heart and your soul and all your energy into it. You have this collaboration, this trust with another human being. It's very intimate, it's very personal. And so when things go sideways, it's incredibly, incredibly painful. And so I want to share some ideas with you, 3 things in particular that you should be implementing and executing at the beginning of the relationship, the beginning of the partnership, to ensure that no matter what happens, whether it ends well or ends poorly, you're going to be protected. And you want to do this work at the beginning. And I know that it's the very last thing you want to think about, because in the honeymoon phase, when you're first dating somebody, you're not thinking about the divorce, right? But you have to put to place the prenuptial agreement with the assumption that things are going to end badly. Now, I'm not saying that for a marriage, but in business, go into it with the assumption that it's going to end badly. And what do you need to do, both of you, to ensure that when things end badly, they at least don't end as badly as possible, right? It's going to be a bad situation regardless, but let's not make it an absolute nightmare. Let's not make it hell on earth. Let's make it so that you can move on with your life as quickly and easily as possible. And so there's a couple things I really want you to think about. Number one is the idea of ownership versus control. This is very important, very powerful, something I did not really understand fully until only a couple of years ago. And I've been hearing my dad say it to me for decades, honestly. It's not about what you own, it's about what you control. The most powerful person in the world, people would probably say, is the president of the United States. And it's not because he owns the most stuff. It's because he controls the most stuff, the most powerful stuff. He controls the United States military infrastructure, right? He controls the United States economic engine in a lot of ways. That's a lot of power, but it's not because he owns the thing, it's because he controls the thing. And so when you go into the partnership relationship, I want you to be thinking about, what does it mean for you to retain control, even if that means giving up a little bit of what you own? Because the person at the end of the day with the control, it's just a matter of time until they can also own the thing if they want to. And so the very first thing that you need to avoid is a 50-50 partnership where things are split completely evenly. If you are both equally owners and equally in control, then you're in a deadlock. Then there's no way forward if you're not in agreement. And you got to assume the reason this would ever come into place because you're not in agreement. You both have different visions for what you want the next steps to be. You have issues with the person and what they've done prior, right? You're not in agreement. And so you're just setting yourself up for a deadlock in the future. And so give one person 51%, give one person 49%. If you can make it though, so that the other person has a bigger ownership interest and you get the control, that's a good thing, right? Now, I'm not saying that you go and screw the other person over, but when you have the control, you get to decide how you wield that control. If you don't have that control, you're just vulnerable to whatever is decided against you. If neither of you have control, honestly, that's even freaking worse in a lot of cases. Just being in a deadlock is way worse than just having one person make the decisions and moving forward behind that. So the second part of this then is having clearly defined roles and responsibilities. That's obvious. And so I'm not saying anything that you probably haven't already thought of. The part, though, that you maybe have not considered here is, what are the roles, responsibilities, and consequences? If you do not clearly articulate in your operating agreement, and let me just say this, if you don't have an operating agreement and you're in a partnership right now, you need to stop. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go straight to jail right this moment. Do nothing else today until you get an operating agreement defined and signed by both of you. I'm telling you, You do not go into a partnership without an OA. So get your partnership agreement. Clearly define roles and responsibilities and consequences. The roles and responsibilities, typically the inside of a business, inside of a partnership LLC, the two big ones are going to be president and treasurer. Those are the two seats that carry the most power. You got to have a president. You got to have a treasurer. Don't do co-president bullshit. Ask me how I know. It doesn't work. Again, I know this stuff from firsthand experience. You cannot share the ultimate power. It cannot be done. Somebody has to do it. That means you either have to suck it up and let them do it, or if you don't trust them to do it, don't do business with them, right? Now, in hindsight, I was right not to trust. Anywho, it doesn't matter. This is neither here nor there. Anywho, okay, clearly defined roles and responsibilities, and then the next thing is consequences. Most operating agreements will not really map this out, but I find it really useful to declare what is the consequence if you don't do your job? Because it is very hard to take equity away from a person if it's not written into a contract. If it says, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, then you will lose X, you'll forfeit this. And what ends up happening, and I see this time and time and again, is everything starts off honky-dory. Time goes on. One person ends up doing more of the work than the other person. One person starts to check out. The other person does more work. They build resentment. This person still has the same ownership percentage as before, despite this person doing 80% of the work. Right? That's not necessarily fair, but you can't do anything in the operating agreement because there isn't a consequence that says, hey, you're going to put in 20 hours a week on this job. You're going to show up to the office. You're going to do X, Y, and Z. And if you don't hit these metrics, then the company can claw back your equity and be redistributed, right? If you don't have those terms and conditions in the contract, you can't do it after the fact. And so you're just setting yourself up then to run this company where the other person continues to check out, or they do things nefarious and there's just no consequence. There's no way of punishing them, right? So you have to build that in from the beginning, knowing that hopefully you never need to use it, but more than likely at some point it will come into play. And I guarantee you'll be glad that you have it written and executed beforehand than rather just fighting a futile battle after the fact. That then leads to the third thing, which is when the relationship gets to the point where there is no way forward, I cannot work with you anymore. We have different visions for what we want this business to be. You need to have a way to split paths and go different directions and just be done. If your operating agreement does not have some kind of buy-sell agreement inside of it, you are stuck with that person into perpetuity, right? What I mean by that is you and I, we've built this business. It's worth $50 million. And now we decide, I want to build it to $500 million. And you decide that you just want to live a lifestyle business. You only want to work 5 hours a week, right? So now I'm working 80 hours a week trying to build a $500 million business. You're on the beach in Bali, and I don't want to build this thing with you anymore, because why should you get the benefit of me building this into a $500 million enterprise and you just being on the beach over here? It doesn't make any sense. But if I don't have a buy-sell agreement in place in the operating agreement, I can't force you to sell. I can go to you and be like, hey, I'd like to buy you out. And you're like, you know what? I think I'd rather stay. I'd rather stay because it sounds like you're going to work and build this thing into something pretty valuable. And I'm like, well, what if I stop? And it's like, cool, well, we have a non-compete over here. So it's not like you can just go and build something else and start like competing against me. So it's like, shit, I'm stuck, right? I'm stuck for at least a year or two until that non-compete wears out. And like, yeah, you got me. Okay. So now you have to make a decision. Okay. Do you just not build the thing that you want to build out of spite to this person, or do you build it anyway and bring them along and they get the benefit? I don't know. But if you had the foresight at the beginning of the relationship to write into your contract a buy-sell agreement, like a shotgun clause that simply said, there's so many different ways this can take form, but the simplest is like, I write down the number, you decide if you're buying or selling at that number. It's that simple. And then we're just locked in. And it incentivizes both sides to think really hard about what it is that they want. So like, for instance, if the business currently at fair market value is $5 million and I really want to keep the business because I think I can turn it into $500 million, I might offer you $6 million, right? I might offer you more than what the business is currently worth, because you look at that and you're like, yeah, I'd like to take the $6 million right now because like it's really only worth $5 million, right? Conversely, if they decide, yeah, you know what, I will pay you $6 million and I'm going to keep the business, then, you know, at least I got more than what the business was worth. And like, that was a good deal for me too, right? I can't be too upset that I gave up the opportunity to build it into something much bigger. But simply having that written into place gives you an exit mechanism. And you'd be surprised how badly you want to get out of a relationship that has gone sour in a business. And if there's nothing that's clearly defined in the contract, you're really like up a creek without a paddle. You're kind of between a rock and a hard place of like, I don't like this person. I don't want them to get a good deal here, but I also just want to be done with them, right? And so you end up having to compromise and do something that you really don't want to do for the sake of your mental health and being able to move on with your life. But if you had just done these 3 things beforehand, like you'd be in a much better position for that exit to get on with your life and do the things that you want to do. And I'm telling you, like, partnerships are great. Don't let me scare you and think that like you should avoid partnerships. I think they are a fantastic way to grow a business. Just go in with your eyes wide open, make sure that you're protected, make sure that you start with the end in mind, work backwards from that, so that when you get to that emotionally charged place in the future where things are going off the rails, you already have defined the rules of the game by which you're going to play. The worst time to try and agree on rules is when you both have your knives out, trying to stab each other in the throat. It's like, fuck you, there's no rules. I'm trying to kill you, right? Do it before you think you need it. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.